Yes.
Many hands, many lands, many candles. One circle, one fire, one spirit. Many hands, many lands, many candles. One circle, one fire, one spirit. Many hands.
Hello, peace, love, and Reiki. Rachel Goldberg here, and so excited to be here with you, our global Reiki community, for this next episode, I suppose, of Global Reiki Webinars with myself and Usui Shiki-ryoho Grandmaster Phyllis Furumoto. So if this is your first time coming across a Global Reiki webinar, welcome. You're either here with us live in our webinar jam, or you are watching a replay on YouTube, and that's awesome. If you're on YouTube and you'd like to be able to join the discussion live, the best place to go is to our Facebook group. It's a closed group. Just search Global Reiki Webinars. That's the name of the Facebook group, Global Reiki Webinars. And someone from the community will approve you to come. You can join the discussion. If there are any questions you have while you're watching this, you can type them in there. And that's also the first place that you will be invited to register for these live events. So those of you who are with us live, if you run into any issues with the audio or video, the best thing to do is refresh your web browser, or I think I'm reversed where you're seeing me. So up in your top left corner, usually that's where you can hit refresh, and it'll resync the audio and video for you. And if that doesn't work, then use the link you used to get here and log back in. So we've got, there's so much happening on the chat. I didn't even see how many check-ins we have. We've got people joining us from Eilat, Israel, Georgia, the UK, lots of people from the Netherlands today, Holland, New York, Saudi Arabia. I'm here in Evanston, Illinois. Earlier, before I started talking, I wrote down we have community members from Estonia, Minnesota, Perth, Australia. Good evening for you. It's morning for me here in Evanston, Illinois, which is Chicagoland. And very, very soon, I'm gonna turn it over to Phyllis, who is joining us from Green Valley, Arizona. And today she's going to be talking with us about our connection to spiritual energies and symbols. And so there are a lot of reflections that people have submitted in advance, and we'll get to just communicate with the community and have some conversation with Phyllis around this topic. So a couple of last things is that we will be doing an online intensive. These are private and paid experiences with Phyllis online that are much, much more intimate than these larger public webinars. And that's coming up in December, and it's going to be on the integrity of second degree. So if you're interested in that, having a more intimate conversation online, not only with Phyllis and myself, but with other members of the Global Reiki community, who want to talk about the integrity of second degree. We're going to be opening registration for that at the end of this webinar. And the other thing is that we make these public webinars available for the global Reiki community, and some people from the community feel like they'd like to offer us a gift, and if that's you, we absolutely appreciate it. It allows us to pay for our technology and all of the tools that we use in order to invest our time into facilitating these experiences. So, so I'm going to put that link up right now, and you'll see it. If you click on the button, it'll open up in a different page, so don't worry, it won't take you away from the webinar. And if you'd like to send us a gift, we definitely appreciate that. So without further ado, here is Phyllis.
Hello, good morning, at least from Green Valley, Arizona. I'm glad to be home. And let's start by connecting with each other through Reiki. So please, let's put our hands on ourselves anywhere, it doesn't matter, and close our eyes. And allow this connection to transport us into a circle. Thank you. I was just thinking that a circle is a very ancient symbol. And this symbol for me is very important in our Reiki community today, because quite often we think about first degree students, second degree students, and masters in a kind of hierarchy. But, you know, a triangle or even a what's it called? A pyramid shape is another natural symbol that we have used for a millennium. But they're not symbols of power, they're symbols of development. So what's important for me is that we really connect to the symbol of a circle, because it means that all of us have a gift. All of us have something to bring to the circle that's unique and different. And I sit in the circle. I don't sit at the top of the pyramid. And that's a very important piece for me in where we're going to go today and in the next webinars. One of the most intriguing pieces for me of my practice in Reiki has been this use of symbols. When I took second degree from Hawaii Takata, I still had very little knowledge of what Reiki was and what the practice was. So I learned them as a kind of another piece of information that I got from her. And I memorized them like you would any piece of information. And then I memorized how to use them. And then I used them. And she gave me this assignment to treat her every day. Probably knowing that I wouldn't do it every day, but I could do it most every days. And if I lapsed for too long, then she would call me up and say, well, you haven't sent me a treatment lately. And I would wonder, I wonder how she knows this. I started to teach Reiki a few years later. I started to receive a lot of questions from my students about symbols that I couldn't really answer. And as it is, Reiki brought to me people and books and things that allowed me to at least have some understanding of symbology. One of the things that happened is that I had many Jungian therapists in my groups for like 2 or 3 years, and they took the symbols of second degree and researched them, and that was really interesting. But what I realized through this endeavor is that it wasn't the exploration of the symbol that was so important to me. It was where the symbol took me and the experience I had in using the symbol. So that's what I would like to concentrate on today, is not what do they mean, but where do they take us? What are the universal kind of maybe even primeval lessons that we're learning as human beings from using symbols? So one of my other priorities is to bring us back to what I consider to be impeccability with our language. And in English, especially in the Reiki community, I feel like we tend to throw words around without really knowing what they mean or what they imply or what actually the energy is that what we are bringing into the space. So it's one of the reasons why I go to Wikipedia, which is a great resource on the web, and also then to research throughout the internet to just connect with wise people, other people who have really studied symbols and symbology in relationship to humankind, and to glean some of their wisdom so that we can share that together. One of the most common definitions of symbol is something used for or regarded as representing something else. A material object representing something, often immaterial. Well, I found this definition really flat, pretty dry, and I tried to add my experience of using the symbols to this definition, and it's hard to relate. So I went on, and Joseph Campbell is one of my go-to guys these days because of his work with mythology, with symbols, and just his way of being with the universe and how it's put together. I really find this very compatible with my experiences in Reiki. And he proposed this definition, and he used the word propose, which I really liked a lot as well. And he says a symbol is an energy evoking and directing agent. A symbol is an energy evoking and an energy directing agent. And I went, wow, that's my experience. Because when I use the symbols and I call it evoking a certain energy, and it directs it into a place that I'm taught how to enter. Heinrich Zimmer has a more expansive piece about symbols that I'd like to share with you. A symbol is a visual image or sign representing an idea, a deeper indicator of universal truth. Symbols are a means of complex communication that often have multiple levels of meaning. This separates symbols from signs, as signs have only one meaning. So this was really important for me to read in these writings about symbols, that symbols and signs are often put together, but they are also very distinct in their definition. And I feel like that's really important for us in our Reiki practice. He goes on to say that human cultures use symbols to express specific ideologies and social structures, and to represent aspects of their specific culture. Thus, symbols carry meanings that depends upon one's cultural background. In other words, the meaning of a symbol is not inherent in the symbol itself, but is culturally learned, which I find really so true in people from different cultures taking and learning the Reiki symbols and being able to relate to them. And sometimes in some cultures, their relating is so different than the one that I come from that it's, I have to take it into account and kind of figure out if this is really going to lead them in the right direction. And what I really need to trust is that the use of the symbol as I teach it in second degree, and as anyone teaches it in second degree, allows the student then to enter another culture, which is what the culture is that we have in common, called, for a better word, Reiki culture. Carl Jung says, a sign stands for something known, as a word stands for a referent. So we all know, if I say the word table, you have an idea immediately of a table in your head, or an image. He contrasted this with symbols, which he used to stand for something that is unknown and cannot be made clear or precise. Stands for something that is unknown and that cannot be clear or precise, which I love, because it means that articulation is very difficult and that it comes from our unique experience, and sometimes that experience cannot be expressed. Well, in my assumption about the symbols in general and the addition of symbols in our practice, this is my story. From the beginning of humankind, symbols were made to communicate or perhaps access energies that were not accessible in any other way. On one level, the access was vital, meaning that the symbol was to express gratitude and therefore nourish the spirit of the animals that were needed for survival. So this had to do with the individual survival, with the tribe's survival, with the cultural survival. As well, sun, rain, and other environmental necessities were also symbolized. It was a way to connect, to communicate, and to gain oneness through symbols. And perhaps at the same time, or perhaps as humankind became more conscious, a concept of overall being, or we could call it God or gods, started to be accessed through symbols. And over the millennium, symbols have come to be a part of our daily lives, sometimes so subtly that we need to take a second look. When I was writing this, I happened to step out of my office and went into the living room where the TV was on, and there was an ad on the TV. And if you look closely at television ads, you will see that they are full of symbology. And it's really interesting to just look at advertisement as a series of symbols that's supposed to touch us in places that we are not actually conscious of, and actually are not aware that we actually have this connection. So very interesting. Check it out. To go on, in my assumption, Mikao Usui, in his study of everything, including the occult, religions, the unknown, the mystics, understood that the first step to connect with the energy of Reiki and to discover the connection with the human body was physically. The next layer was energetic. In Japan, energetic connection through symbology was very common and is still common today. I believe it was a natural step for him to to develop symbols that allowed the student to explore another part of themselves as a human being. It is said that these symbols were given to him at the time when he was in the trance on Kurama Mountain. He held them for many years after that, and then found a way to use them specifically in this practice. Heinrich Zimmer says that symbols and their use are culturally learned, and I believe that we are creating a Reiki culture in which symbols are being used by the ordinary person to discover energetic pathways that are able to be accessed by human beings. Should we have the key? One of the ways I speak about symbols in second degree is to speak about them as keys to access a certain energy that allows us as students to focus on a certain aspect of healing or becoming whole. It isn't unusual for people to want to know where the symbols came from. My answer to that is that they are part of our ancient tribal memory, archetypical kinds of spaces that we enter into as human beings. And I believe that this is where these symbols came from. And the Jungian psychologists that have been my students, and now some of them are my friends, and a couple of them are actually Reiki masters, have really shared with me the surprise, actually, for them, and also the profound understanding that though they look like something in our modern world, that they actually have very ancient roots, and that's for me. It also sort of allows me to hold this belief that they come from ancient human culture, and that the use of each of these symbols is not necessarily what they might have been used for 300 years ago or in another kind of culture. So it's a very specific use for a specific practice that we came to. And Many of you have responded to the questions when you registered and have said much of what I would say. So we're going to go on now to the sharings and the questions that sometimes followed the sharing. And Rachel told me just before we went on air that in the last 24 hours or 30 hours or so, many of you have registered and also have shared. And I know these sharings are very rich, and we don't have time to air them online today, but they will be on Facebook as soon as I can get them typed out of the internet and into a document and then placed on the web page, on the Facebook page, sorry. Because for me, this topic is really not about all of me talking to you. It's about starting a conversation that I think we can really go deeply into without getting into the form of practice, without getting into the form of the symbols, without getting into even knowing how many symbols you hold or I hold or Rachel holds. That's not important. This quality or this piece of our practice that has innately and inherently within it symbols that connect to what I would imagine certain qualities or substance of energy, allows us as human beings to open up a whole new part of ourselves. So now I can really relate to the statement that says, I'm an energetic being, because I can relate to other energies that are present in our universe. So we're going to go to you and to your sharings and your questions.
Yes. So if you're still unsure, if you took the time to submit your reflections before showing up on this live broadcast now, make sure you're part of that Facebook group, Global Reiki Webinars, so that you can watch the discussion board and see Phyllis's response. But we will go through a number of them today. So Michelle, her sharing is, at first I felt symbols just allowed me to focus on a specific aspect of my work. Now the symbols seem to be specific frequencies or types of energy that flow through me.
And I'd just like to say thank you, Michelle, for the last, because you can see how I struggled with articulation a few seconds ago. And I agree. And the operative or very important word for me is the word seem that you use. Now the symbols seem to be specific frequencies or types of energy that flow through me. What that word seem means is that it's like, this is what it is now. And when I reach another level of understanding and a practice with the symbols, I might have another impression. And this for me is really great, because you started your progression, and it means that we have other steps to progress into, myself included. And that for me is one of the gifts of having symbols in our practice. Thank you.
And Camilla said, I feel it is helping to increase the focus and attention in the Reiki channeling, helping the students to become aware of our mind's power and role in creative work. Also manifesting the effect of the symbol, creating an opening or being a key working on, for instance, clearing and balancing energy. If the Reiki master is at a state of heightened attention and filled with Reiki, do you feel the symbols really are necessary to use? Have you ever felt the symbols were inappropriate to use? And if so, which given situation?
Thanks, Camilla. And, you know, this focus came up in many different sharings. And it is really true. It's like, you know, in our hands-on healing, it's like this very general, feels like for me, a very general focus on the being of the person, on the whole person. And when I'm using the symbols, it's like it focuses on a specific, either a specific situation that's happening, or even a specific understanding of how Reiki can assist this person in having insights and healing. So it's been really wonderful to read these sharings and to see how articulate you are. So thank you very much. Um, I believe that through use, these symbols become a part of us, and they are embedded in our humanness, our particular individual humanness. And that this, for me, is very important, because it means that instead of worrying about, is the symbol being used correctly, or am I going to hurt someone, or am I going to, you know, all these questions that are about doing it correctly, they go away when the symbol becomes a part of us, and when the practice becomes really a part of us. So then this deeper understanding and profundity of experience can happen. It's a little bit like driving for me, you know. I've driven for so long that driving is really even more than a meditation. It's a process into another reality for me. And, you know, I don't want to get into a total different reality, because I have to pay attention to all the cars and stuff around me. But it really puts me into a heightened state of awareness that I really enjoy. And nothing like a long road trip to bring a lot of insight and answers. So this, so the same thing for me is true as a Reiki master. You know, of course, there might be some exceptional instances where I think, okay, you know, I really want to use a symbol, and I just do it, but I don't do it in the sense of how I normally do. It's within me. But, you know, Hawaii Takata said that every time you want to evoke the energy of the symbol, we must draw it with our hand, we must say it, and we must visualize it. And I feel like that's using as many senses as possible. And I still do that, you know, 95% of the time. And why? It's not about that I don't know the symbol or it's not a part of me, but I believe that in evoking this symbol, there is something that comes to me that is about conscious choice. It's conscious choice to evoke this energy. And when I evoke the energy, what is it that I am connecting to inside of myself? And I believe that it's a deeper and deeper and deeper connection into my humanness, into humanity. And so, yes, I feel like they're necessary to use, because I don't feel like we actually have the capacity to understand the real gift that is being given to us as we use the symbols. That's my theory. And there are many times that I feel like the symbols are inappropriate to use. And, you know, I heard this lovely story that echoed my own story about being a radical. And, and in my younger days, in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, I really prided myself on being a radical and a rebel and, you know, a pretty on the edge person. And what I have found in my practice of Reiki is that I've become a conservative. And maybe that's okay. That's a kind of a balance between my younger years and now. But, you know, I become a conservative because hopefully this is wisdom. I don't know. I can just put it out and you can test it for yourself. But I believe because we don't really understand or know the gift and the energetic behind using symbols as a human being, evoking a certain energy and then using it for a conscious purpose, I don't know what that's actually doing out in the world. I don't know what actually happens within me. I just know that it's rewarding. It's sometimes leads me into amazing inner spaces and amazing spaces with other people. And so I want to be able to honor that space that I get into and that the other person gets into by not using the symbols in a flip way, in a way that's about design, a way that's about showing off, a way that might exclude other people. So for instance, when I have Reiki shares and there are first and second degree students in the Reiki share, I ask second degree students not to use symbols in their treatment. Because I believe that students knowing that the second degree students are using symbols, they can like intellectually understand this, but energetically they're excluded. And I just believe that, you know, we have great heart and that inclusion is really important. And so this is one of the times where I feel like it's inappropriate to use the symbols in mixed treatment groups. So see if that works for you and you know how that goes about, but that's where I'm coming from.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember the very first time that my immediate Reiki family got together for a share, and that was precisely one of the ongoing conversations that those of us who, you know, called together the circle for the share were talking about. And I just realized that part of what's really great about these webinars is that probably community all over the world is having these same conversations that have been had, and it's really helpful to
Yeah, and it's
just hear your conclusion.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes up with that is that, you know, first degree treatment is the basis of all of our practices. You know, it's viable, it's transformational, it's what gets us to take second degree, right? So there is an idea that if you are initiated in second degree, then you must always be a second degree person and student. And so you must always use the symbols in every situation and every treatment. But for me, we have a choice. We can do a first degree treatment, we can do a second degree treatment, we can and if you have entered into mastery, there's another level of being with people. So we get to have choices. So I'm a first degree student, I'm a second degree student, and I'm a master student. And each one of those has its own particular practice that increases my understanding of who I am and as a human being, and also increases and develops me to be a member of humanity. So for me, honoring first degree students and their practice is really important for all of us who have moved into the deeper understanding of Reiki practice. Very important. So that's another piece of that for me. Okay.
Great. Our next reflection came from Melissa, who said, I think it just says, helps me focus and visualize without attachment to a chakra or body part. I am curious to hear your thoughts on these other channeled symbols that people are using. I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on the symbols that have multiple versions, not just direction difference, but significant differences in appearance. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I just really love, Melissa, your sharing. And I totally agree with you. And, you know, one of the things that was so weird for me, and I use the word weird in quotation marks, when I first started teaching, is that often my second degree students, once they opened to having symbols in their lives, dreamed or were given other symbols. And this happened so often that it was kind of scary. And I didn't have my master physically to go to, so I did a lot of talking to her out on a rock in the middle of a field in British Columbia, where I was living at the time, and said, you know, what am I supposed to do with this? And eventually, what I realized as I worked with these students, and they said, well, should I use them in my treatment of others? And I said, well, intuitively, I said no. Realize is that, you know, humankind and symbols, we're, you know, like they're just an inherent part of who we are. Symbols are a part of our humanness, and it's a part of our communication to a world that, as we have heard earlier today, you know, is unknown, not precise, not articulatable in a lot of ways. So I believe that once we open to this relationship of symbol as a human being, then the symbols that come to us are for us. Therefore, each individual person is an important communication that that symbol has for that individual. And so what I had them do is to just be with the symbol over time. And over time, they would gain more and more understanding of what the symbol meant for them. And it was kind of neat because it felt like maybe this is a process that happened with Mikao Usui, that he got these symbols, and in the story, what I heard was, and he knew what they were for. And then, but then he had to apply them, you know, within this practice that he was developing. And it must have taken time and a little bit of experimentation, if we can use that word lightly. And, you know, one of the lovely things about the story of Mikao Usui is that he's a human being in the story. And so all of us get to follow this humanness in our own practice. So as these students took time and just sat with and were with these symbols, there were profound things that happened through these symbols. And I believe that it's a natural process that happens to some people. I have never received a clear shape, form, symbol like that. But I feel like my creativity and my way of processing information is not in that way. So I wouldn't have received them in that same way. Okay. I just have a visitor. So, Rachel, could you take over for a minute?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I suppose what I can do while Phyllis sees who's at her door is I can talk with you about the online intensive we have coming up in December, and Phyllis will return in a moment for more reflections, conversation, and we'll close with a little Reiki practice, which this is actually great. So we'll close with the practice without this right before it, which for me, maybe it's just me, but there's part of me that feels sort of nervous about you know, offering these experiences, and I'm working on that. I appreciate some Reiki, but over the summer, Phyllis and I started offering these online intensives where they're smaller groups. The first one we had 17 people. The second one we had 18 or 19 people, and we actually used this same platform, bringing people on to share their video and actually have a conversation with us. And we recently got a new video conferencing software called Zoom that actually allows all of the participants to share their video at once. So we're really excited about this next intensive coming up on December 11th on the integrity of second degree. And it'll be more of this, but more of a live conversation. And it's the technology is just so remarkable that we really will be able to have a circle feeling with all of our videos shown on the screen at once. While we talk, we can all look at the same person as they're speaking and having a conversation. And also this new platform has a little bit large of a capacity. We will still limit enrollment if there's a lot that comes through, because we like these conversations to be intimate, the online intensives, but we also will be able to take a little bit more than, you know, the 17, 18 that we had on our previous intensives. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to be posting a link very shortly where you can click a button. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, I'll put it, if the registration is still open, you'll be able to find it in the description below the video. So you can click through and just read a course description, fill out the application. That's the first step of registration. The second step would be submitting a tuition for this program. It's an all-day event with 3 different sessions, and the tuition is $126 US. And that's the second step. And the third step will be actually receiving the link from us once we receive those 2 parts so that you can participate. So I'll post that up soon, and we'll return to Phyllis. Nod your head if you'd like me to just read the next reflection.
I'm going to answer Melissa's second question first.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm in my Reiki office, and I didn't lock the door, and these people just came and stood there, and they didn't leave. So it was interesting. I didn't know what they wanted. So Melissa, you also said that you're curious to hear thoughts on symbols that have multiple versions. Well, you know, basically, like everything in oral tradition, the shape and the form of each of these symbols changes with what we call handwriting, you know, like how well somebody memorizes it and so on. You know, in the early days, there was a Reiki master who was a colleague of mine, and she was so tough on her students. The symbols had to be like pretty much exactly the same as hers, like in size, shape, form, everything. And I thought she was being kind of mean. And now, with the advent of many, many generations past that, her students still maintain a kind of integrity of the symbol that sometimes other students don't have. And it's not a blame, it's just humanness. So try not to get too much into versions and, you know, having the symbols have to be exactly the same. I know that there have been conscious changes to some of the symbols. There have been unconscious changes to some of the symbols. I myself, as a young master, didn't really intend to change one of the symbols, but because I was sloppy, I did. And I was called to rights by some of my colleagues and said, you know, this is not what we were taught, you know. And I went, oh, right, that's true. So I had to, you know, come back to the original form that I was given by Hawaii Takata. So it does happen. And what's important is, does the symbol that you have, that you use, does it connect you to these energies? Do you feel like they are working? Do you sense a different quality of your treatment as you use these symbols? Can you tell a distinction between each of the different symbols and their energies and so on? So this is what's more important for me, because like anything, if we write our signature so differently, I use this as a metaphor, then the bank won't cash my check if I write it really differently. And I have this fun story about my ex-husband who was a calligrapher. And one day he was writing a very important check. And he decided to calligraphy his signature. And the bank didn't accept it because they knew it was him. And it was beautifully calligraphied, you know, in this ancient English script and so on. But it wasn't his signature, his sloppy, you know, scribble that they are used to. And so, you know, this for me is really important to remember, that if we want to go back and find the original true version, that may or may not ever exist. What exists for me is to go back to through the masters who were initiated and to see if anybody consciously changed the symbols, and if they did, why. And if you adhere or agree with that, then you can hold them as your own. So this is for me part of the process of being a student these days. Thank you. Yeah.
The next reflection is from Francine, who wrote, "It seems to depend on the relationship the student has with the symbols. If the student honors them and incorporates them into everyday practice, the student only uses them occasionally, there will be less of a cumulative energetic effect and less appreciation of them and how they can facilitate healing for oneself and others. The symbols have the potential to greatly enhance all aspects of a student's experience of life, create greater consciousness and awareness, and guide her or him deeper into the mystery. Using them only for each intended purpose, I find the occasions for using the symbols is infinite, and I am only held back by remembering to apply them in any given situation."
This is a lovely sharing. Thank you, Francine. And I agree, you know, like with everything in Reiki, practice is the key, because I believe that as we practice, we are building capacity in ourselves for something that is to come. And we don't know what that something is. We don't know what that environment will be. But I do believe that these are preparatory to some greater purpose that we just can't even hold in our minds right now. Thanks.
Okay. And the next reflection is from Lydia, who said, it helps the student, me, to focus. It gives a deepening effect and a more clear understanding what we are doing at the moment. It helps to feel more surrender and gratitude to the system and energy.
Thanks, Lydia. You know, this is another part of our practice with using the symbols. For me, one of the things, and I refer to the next webinar that Rachel was speaking about, that for me, one of the main sort of overall headings of lessons is about integrity, about our integrity. So, for instance, it's really easy to not treat someone who doesn't want to be treated if they have to lie on a table to be treated. Because if they don't lie down on the table, then you don't get to treat them, and they retain their own dignity and individual choice, and we have to figure out how to live with that, even though we may really want to treat them and feel like Reiki would really make a difference in their life. We have to honor their choice. Now, when you don't have to get somebody to lie on the table, but you can, if you will, secretly treat someone at a distance, then it is a call for integrity. And integrity has a lot of different meanings. It doesn't just mean to be honest or to be honorable. It also means to be whole. So does this action of yours in secret create wholeness in you? And does it actually create wholeness in the other person? So this is like the main question that we're going to be speaking about. And I'm just thrilled to be able to have conversation with you, especially on our new platform, Zoom. Mm-hmm. And Lydia, one of the next big headliner lesson blocks for me is about surrender and gratitude. It's like, if we can move in our integrity to understanding our spiritual lessons that we're learning, then the next thing is to surrender to that and to have gratitude for all that we're learning. And that's a very profound step in our spiritual development as human beings. So thank you for calling this to our attention.
There's one question I see in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so it comes from Claire, who's on live with us now. And Claire said, hi, sorry if this has already been asked, but I'm wondering if you think we can send distance Reiki without using symbols.
Another question of integrity. Yes, it was inferred, but it wasn't answered directly. So I'll answer this directly. 95% of the time, I personally still always use the symbols in the way that I was taught. Because I believe that it's not just something that we can see on the surface that is the benefit of using the symbol. It's some patterning, some deepening, some inarticulate, something that's not able to be spoken, something that's going on deeply inside of us. So that when we evoke the symbol consciously as a choice, this is really important to do, and it's important to follow the means of evoking. Personally, whenever I send a distant treatment, I send a distant treatment. The way that I was taught, the way that I practiced as a beginner, because I'm still a beginner. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. There's one more question on the chat that I think is relevant to some of the first things you were talking about. Is it okay?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
This one comes from Amal, who said, one of my students, when I attuned her to Reiki 3, master level, she sees a Tibetan symbol. Can she use it?
Well, as I said before, I really encourage your student to keep this for themselves, to take time to understand what it's about for them, and they will understand the use of it. And mostly it's not for use with other people, but it's something that's specifically been given. It's like a gift from our universe to that person. And that person is the one and the only one who will receive the understanding of how that symbol is to be carried in consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Another question came in on the chat. Would you like to respond to that or go back to some of these reflections that came in advance?
No, take the next question. That'll be fine.
Okay. So Kristen wrote, as a master, I have been taught to only use the master symbol without, taught to only use the master symbol without most respect. With utmost respect, just for initiations and very rarely during a session with a client with special needs. Others say they use it on a daily basis. What do you think?
Well, this gets into a very sticky situation for me. And somewhere in our questions today, someone, was that from Christina or Kristen?
It says Kristen. She may have left off the A when logging into.
Well, yeah, because it's interesting, because there's a Christina that says, I would like to ask a question about master symbol. Is it possible to use it, and if possible, how? So I'm wondering if it's the same person. So Christina or Kristen, if this is you, this brings me to a couple of different questions that's behind that. So I'll move into this particular question with some trepidation, I have to say. I don't consider there to be a master symbol. So now everybody's gonna maybe go into shock, but I believe that what happened in the early 1980s is that there was this idea that in order to be a master, you needed to have another symbol. And it kind of follows on from second degree. And so there is a part of the initiation that could be my viewpoint, and this is where it gets really sticky, because I don't want to interfere or imply or induce other questions about this, because I won't answer them, because your practice and my practice could be different. So I'm trying to make this as general as possible. So there is a possibility that something could have been named a master symbol. But as far as I know, this is not a symbol in the way that the second degree symbols are. This is actually Japanese kanji, and it is an actual phrase that is used in Japan in a sacred context. So it's not a symbol in the way that we're using it. It's almost like a sign that people were talking about earlier, our references, but it refers to a specific energetic. And so for me, if there were a master symbol, it would be the initiation itself. because in order for us to initiate or attune someone, we have to be a part of that attunement. We have to be a part of that initiation, not just physically, but energetically. And when you go into the trades, like blacksmithing and carpentry and those kinds of creative trades, they have classes that are like apprentice, journeyman, and then master craftsman. And in order to be a master craftsman, you have to be able to produce something that has your signature in it. And by signature, I don't mean signing your name. I mean, it has to have your energy. It has to be part of you that you've created. And I believe that this is our symbol, our master symbol. It's not a configuration of lines. So this particular configuration of lines in Japanese is like a sacred blessing. And for some people in Reiki, it's used in that way. In my practice, it's not. And I think that what's really important is for us that whatever we're taught, especially if we're masters, we need to have loyalty and fidelity to that teaching. Because if we are drawn to a master and we receive their teaching, then I want to honor that moment of choice as being absolutely perfect for you in that moment, whatever that choice was. And that in that perfect moment, agreement with your master is to receive what they have to give you and to practice in as much authenticity as possible that particular form. And that for me is integrity. And this is what we want to live, is a kind of human integrity. So for me, I can't really answer this question for you because I don't know what you were taught. And but this is how I hold this whole master symbol and so on. Honestly, the only proof that you're a master is that you have a student. If somebody recognizes you as a master, as their teacher of Reiki, then you're it. It doesn't matter if you feel like a master or you have the information or you feel like you have the power or anything, but once you initiate that student, you're a master. And no one can take that away from you. Mm. So this is what I need to say about this. Sorry, it sounds kind of lectury, but I feel so passionate about it because, you know, there's so many people out there who have entered into mastery, maybe even on a whim, or just like somebody comes up to you in a gathering and says, you know, I'd like to initiate you as a Reiki master. How about it? And you go, sure. But in that moment of sure, when you say that, there's something inside of you that I trust said yes. So what is it that said yes? And how can you nurture that yes? And for me, that's what I'm here to help you with. That's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to return to the reflections that
okay, cool.
in advance. And Conrado, Joan, Kathy, Susan, I've pulled your questions aside, and if we don't get to them on the broadcast, I'll make sure that Phyllis sees them. Oh,
Conrado, there must not be two of them. He's in here somewhere.
Yeah, he's the same one. Would you like me to go straight to his reflection?
No, we can
okay.
go through. I think we'll have enough time to do all of them. So,
Great. So Margot,
okay.
Margot said, I feel like I use keys of an energy from an ancient, different mystic world when I use the symbols.
Yes.
I think that it is amazing that I am able to work beyond the concept of time and space. No questions. Thank you. I just do what my master taught me to do.
Hey, good timing, Margot. And I really loved your sharing. One of the things that I talk a little bit about this with my students in second degree is that, you know, in first degree Reiki, often we have these little moments of, you know, stepping outside of our humanly created bounds of time and space. Like we created the limit of time and space. It's not there. It's like a fabrication. So, you know, Reiki always brings us, I believe, to what's real, what's authentic. And in second degree, it's clearly challenging all of our ideas and belief systems about how important time is and how important distance is. Like when a second degree student comes to me and says, I want to be a Reiki master, but I can't find anybody in my own city, I say, hey, you're not limited to your city, honey. You have thousands of Reiki masters all over the world. So my to you is that you put yourself in a place of meeting some of these people and seeing where you connect and what form you connect to, because you got all the choices you want. You know, time and space doesn't matter. And so it does matter in the sense of, you know, we all want to be together on this webinar. That's really helpful to have time, space. But with the second degree practice, we challenge that importance, that priority of our lives, and realize that there's a balance, that in fact we choose the constraints of time, space that we know, and we can choose to have no time, no space.
Mhm.
And that choice is just significant beyond words. So that's part of what I'm talking about, that we can't even comprehend the kind of stuff that we're actually becoming every day. Like it's becoming so familiar, we hardly talk about it. Interesting.
Okay. The next reflection is from Delia, who said, it is a way to connect with the language of universe so it would respond and allow me to enjoy the divine healing energy.
Wow. Thank you, Delia. Nothing more to be said about that.
Great. And here we are with your reflection, Conrado. You said, being linguistic and symbolic beings ourselves, Reiki symbols help us focus our conscious and anchor with energy. I personally see symbols as mental triggers as well as collective repositories of energy. Why is the Japanese versions of the symbols different from the Western ones?
Well, Conrado, I love this phrase, collective repositories of energy. And I'm going to sit with that for a while because it has a concept that I've actually not ever thought of. This collective repositories of energy. So I really will hold that for a while. It awakens in me maybe a new understanding. And so I really am grateful for you and for your sharing. And I hope you won't be too disappointed in my answer to your question, and that is that I don't know. I don't even know what is Japanese version and what is Western, truthfully. I don't go on the internet very much about Reiki. I only do it to connect with somebody or find out what their practice is in order for me to be able to relate to them. as person to person. So I don't know what the Japanese versions look like because I have my own. And I don't know what other Western versions look like because I have my own. So this is where conservative sometimes maybe doesn't serve my answering your question, but that's just how it is for me. So I'm sorry about that. And I believe that what I said earlier about the different forms and shapes and so on in handwriting maybe applies to this as well. So thank you for your question.
And then we have Christina, who you already responded to, and it actually is a different Christina from Kristen.
Oh, really?
Here with us now. Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Cool. So the next reflection is from Eva, who said, I am still looking for a bridge to remember and use the third symbol.
Uh-huh. Well, Eva, I have advice. Look up your second degree master, attend another class. That's the best. Because if you can't remember the symbol and you can't really relate to it, you know, at the moment of your class, taking the class, you were not prepared for that symbol, and it's very common. Most of the people that I have in second degree classes, they have a favorite symbol, they have a least favorite symbol, and they have one that's kind of, you know, in the middle. And it's really interesting because there's an assumption about what the easiest symbol might be and what the hardest symbol might be, what the easiest one to remember is and what the hardest one to remember is. Forget the assumption. It can be any of the symbols. It just is up to the person. And I believe after teaching so many second degree students, I noticed a pattern. So for me, each of the symbols, because of the energetic that it evokes, you know, in us, and the challenge, sort of the inner challenge for each of us as we use the energy of that symbol, that matches the individual's personal development, emotional development, maybe even. So, for instance, again, I'm treading on very thin ice here. For instance, one of the symbols for me has to do with owning our own power. Being able, and I don't mean power like, you know, more than, less than. I believe in our innate human ability to stand and be human, right? And we are asked to be one with the universe. And if we don't have very good self-esteem, that's really difficult to do. One of the other ones asks us to have intimacy. You know, to be able to be this close to somebody else without skin. To be able to go into someone and know their thoughts and their feelings. And that's a kind of intimacy that sometimes is very, very hard to deal with on a physical level, much less an energetic level. And there's another place where, you know, are we really able to make a difference? Are we really able to be a part of somebody's process, to receive healing, you know, for somebody else? And I feel like, you know, this place of communicator is also very challenging for us because we hardly communicate with ourselves, much less communicate honestly and openly with somebody else. So there are all these different kind of personal lessons involved in using the symbols. And I think that this is why second degree is a kind of process. It's not a technique that you learn and then you just do it and each one of the symbols is the same. No, you know, each of the symbols becomes a part of our who we are and our development, and it's touches us in many, many different ways. So you have to, if you can, go back to the master who taught you second degree and keep at it, because you will be developing yourself, and it's good if you can get back to your master. If you can't, then find somebody who is has the same connection for you and has the same form of practice. Thank you.
Okay. So the next reflection is from Julie, who said, I've lost my way and feel for Reiki. What can I do, please, to get it all back?
Well, the answer is essentially the same as what I told Ava. And on top of that, I would just start treating yourself. And if you were taught self-treatment, then that's a really great way to connect with Reiki. And then find your master, or if you can't do that, find a master that you connect with. And it's not about starting over again. It's kind of more like you went in with a certain motivation. Maybe you find unconsciously that motivation wasn't actually what drew you to Reiki. Maybe something else drew you to Reiki that you're becoming conscious of. And so there's not the connection that you thought you had. So just try to become more conscious of why you feel drawn to the call of Reiki, and then match that with the master who comes to you or who appears in your life, and see if that works. But you need to get back to a master. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Daya, who wrote, the use of symbols creates a space inside a person where he can get a treatment to heal specific issues. It also creates inner gates to the space of the unknown, a touch of the inner self of the person, which is beyond space and time. This work also strengthens the connection to Reiki and creates a meditation between the inner and the outer. And if we speak more practically, the use of symbols enables mental issues, healing, work with addiction, stronger healing treatments, and distant treatments. How often do you recommend to use different forms of symbols in treatments?
I just want to say that it's mediation between the inner and outer.
Hmm.
And I typed it meditation, so I had to look and make sure that I didn't type it and leave it. Okay, and I agree with everything that you shared, and I can relate to it. But I can't relate to your question because it's kind of in a funny form. So I just try to relate to it as best I can. How often do you and I have to put do in there, how often do you recommend to use different forms of symbols? Well, I don't know what the different forms of symbols are. I only have one form of each symbol. What you really meant by that. So I would carry one form of each symbol, and I would use them in treatments where I found that they were appropriate to the person, and also that the person would like to receive them. So I actually ask permission or ask openness from the person who wants to receive a special treatment using the symbols. So you can do that every day for the same person. It doesn't, I mean, I don't know where you wanted to go with this question. So there are no limitations about how often you use the symbols, but keep in mind that, as I said before, you're also a first degree student, so you don't have to use the symbols. It's a choice, and it's important that that choice be conscious, not a habit.
Okay. Our final reflection from before we began that we were prepared to respond to today came from Jean, who said, I find that the symbols help my students focus their mind on the intention of healing. As a master and practitioner, the symbols are almost like an extension of myself. They focus energy and come to mind immediately when needed.
What better way to close than that? Thank you, Jean. Thanks, everybody, for your sharing. I look forward to all the questions and sharings that we didn't have time to cover today in the webinar. And I have a very busy weekend coming up, but next week I'll be able to spend some time and do some typing. And so look for it on the Facebook page of Global Reiki Webinars. And if you want to talk to me more about this, then sign up for the next webinar. And then the last webinar, I mean, we're coming to the end of the year, amazing. And the last webinar of the year will be on the 31st of December. Is that true?
That's the last public webinar, yes.
Yeah. And I really look forward to that. That's going to be really lovely. I love doing kind of New Year's Eve kind of things. We'll have a meditation. And so I don't know if you can drive in your car and be on the webinar, but we'll see. So take care, and I give it back to Rachel.
Great. So for those of you with us live, the button that's displaying at the bottom of your chat is what you click to get to information about the online intensive on the integrity of second degree that we're offering December 11th. And some of you also asked what happened to the PayPal link, and I don't think all of my chat was showing up, but I'll make sure those of you with us live will get the replay of this sent out tomorrow, and I'll make sure that both of those links that we shared during the broadcast are in that email, so you have them to share and look at tomorrow. And thank you for your donations, for your engagement here. These are so wonderful and uplifting and fulfilling to just be present for, and it's humbling for me to be in this role and to see all of it. It's so amazing what a big community we have. And what I'm seeing on the side of my screen is all of the chat just scrolling down with new comments of gratitude and connection and community, which is just so lovely. So right now, let's close with some Reiki. However you choose to practice, either self-practice or if it's in your practice to send distance Reiki, you're welcome to go ahead and do that as well. It's whatever you feel called to right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace, love, and Reiki.
Everyone, thank you for